Jin.
Welcome back. Now, before the break, we were trying to understand your feel on which particular docket you have confidence in, and Moses was just telling us that. I just want to introduce this factor that President Kenyatta has 4 big agendas for this final term of his, of which one is food security, affordable housing, manufacturing, and affordable health. And of course, he's given this dockets to particular people. Henry Rotich still stays at Treasury, and so for him, he'll be looking at President Kenyatta's agenda on economic empowerment. We have Mwangi Kionjori, who is in agriculture, where he'll be delivering. He'll be in charge of delivering Kenyatta's agenda on food security. And then we have newly Farida Karonei, who has been nominated for lands and urban development, who will be driving Kenyatta's agenda of affordable housing. And then finally, Aidan Mohamed on the manufacturing agenda, meant to improve Kenya's manufacturing ability. Now, with that in mind, do you have confidence that these particular people are going to help him achieve his agenda by the end of his term?
Confidence in the people that he has appointed. Since if you look at his big 4 agenda, he has moved. He has fired some. Yeah. He has moved some. So the reason why he's moving and he's firing some, it's because he wants people who can perform. That's why you see in health, we had some strife in health. Health workers are striking, doctors are striking, on and off, on and off. The health cabinet secretary has been demoted to a diplomatic envoy. Also, on the other side of land, we had issues at land. There has been a reshuffle there. That is a new person. So the only way we can assess these people, let's give them time. Let's leave them to go for parliament for vetting, and then if somebody will have an issue against any nominee, you can raise it there at parliament. And if you don't raise it there at parliament, let's judge them after they assume office and how they are going to perform.
Do you have a confidence in this particular top 4 guys on being able to help the president deliver what he promised by the end of his term?
Well, for instance, Farida Karonei, who's now in charge of lands and housing, is a newbie, so there really isn't much that I can speak for her. And also, I don't think she has been in the eye of the public per se for us to say that maybe she previously held a position that we could judge her performance. She has basically come from the private sector to the public sector. So I cannot comment about what I expect to see her do. But if going by her success within the media, which then again now that discord of, how do you bring someone who has basically had a history in media to the lands, to a very big department such as lands, which is very controversial in Kenya. We know that there are so many communities that the biggest issue for African communities and for the Kenyans living in the rural areas is land, the acquisition of land, titles and such things, because then we also know that land is the biggest resource that we do have. Over and above housing, which is one of the big 4 agendas of the Jubilee government, how I'm very keen on seeing how she's going to resolve the land issue, which tends to be a source of strife for very many communities back in the rural areas. Secondly, speaking about the healthcare department, I can't really say I would register my 100% confidence in Cecily Kariuki's ability to lead that department, simply because she formerly held the position of cabinet secretary in charge of the youth. And really, there hasn't been much of promise delivery in terms of the promises that we had in the previous Jubilee government, the promises that were promised to the youth, especially as regards, the employment opportunities that were to be created by her department. So we still see unemployment amongst the youth rising. We still see, and as a result of that, we are seeing a lot of youth now being involved in criminal activity. So, and that is a department she held. That's a department that the first Jubilee government had a lot of promise for. Remember, when they came in, they were a digital government. They were a government that was meant to work for the youth and, by the youth for the youth. Right. So I didn't really see much, so I can't really assess. In terms of industrialization, I think I'm hopeful to see how Adan Mohamed, who has also been holding the position previously, is going to work out his plan such that industrialization is not just at the level of big infrastructural development projects, but projects that actually eventually translate to job creation, and ultimately, let's wait and see. That's all I can say. But the good thing about this new cabinet is the fact that there has been a change at the parliament standing orders, that now the 11th, is it the 11th parliament? Sorry, I'm missing it. But the previous parliament changed the parliament standing orders to include the creation of a new committee called the General Committee, where now all cabinet secretaries will be expected to be appearing before these committees every once in a while to report on the progress of their departments. That's where now we can say we have an opportunity to measure the progress of these various cabinet secretaries and their positions and how they will be delivering on their mandate. Yeah.
All right. You mentioned about, mismatch here and there, mentioning Farida from media now to public sector. But really, does that really affect how they work, considering the fact that cabinet secretaries, actually the people who really, really are hands-on are the permanent secretaries? I tend to
The position of the principal secretary is very important in this dispensation, because first and foremost, that is the AIE, the authority to incur expenditure. Corruption has and continues to be a massive issue in our country today, in our systems of government, both at the national government and at the county. We have principal secretaries who are not necessarily technocrats getting into positions, and the conflict between the CS, who is a political appointee, and the principal secretary. We've had such sorts of conflicts. If you look at the health ministry in the previous government, you had Dr. Mailu always fighting with Dr. Muraguri, and we saw what we saw, the Ministry of Health scandal, the issue of was it NHIF, and so on and so forth. So there's an importance of having a symbiotic relationship between a cabinet secretary and a principal secretary. That is why, for me, I feel it is important to have a CS who comes from that particular field, or at least is knowledgeable. Right. Because if you are a cabinet secretary for lands, and you have media background, it becomes difficult for you to be able to provide, because at the end of the day, the final decision rests with the cabinet secretary. Yes. So it may become a personality issue, where somebody is of a mild personality, the PS and other technocrats can run roughshod on you. Okay. It will be interesting to see. Like Freda Karone has not even been gone through vetting in Parliament, and Kijiji settlement burned down yesterday. So it's going to be interesting to see how she handles the issue of informal settlements. In Nairobi, it has been a problem. Every time there's a fire in the slums, we go back to the issue of housing. What is the government doing on housing? So she already has her work cut out for her. So I really wish all the best to all of them, but it's going to be tough for a CS who's been thrown into a docket that he or she probably doesn't have enough experience. All right, but of course, let's give her the benefit of doubt. She might surprise us. And talking about that, just a minute, they have introduced, President Uhuru Kenyatta has introduced the position of chief administrative secretaries, because when you've talked about conflict, and already there's conflict sometimes between the CS and the PS, and now there's someone else who's come right in between. And there's a question people are asking that this could be the introduction of assistant ministers once again. Do you think it's going to work, Moses?
It is going to work, actually, and that appointment, if I'm to say, the Constitution, if you look at Article 154, it allows him to make such appointments, but after he has been given a recommendation by the Public Service Commission. So, like I had said, that the matter is pending before court, so I wouldn't want to delve into it in that much. But for now, let's see what the court will have to say about that. And once they come they come in power, they go through vetting, we can have a better discussion on that.
Maybe you can give us your sentiments on the same.
I strongly disagree, because you see we're living in a political reality and an economic reality.
Right.
Kenya is suffering with a staggering debt of to the tune of about 485 billion. Every single Kenyan who is born in this country, including the baby who was born 6 minutes ago, enters this world with a debt of 178,000 shillings. And the figures will be revised upwards with every cycle of inflation. We are already suffering with 54% of our wage bill of the GDP going to the wage bill. We are paying more salaries than we are building roads. And then now we've introduced an amorphous position of cabinet administrative secretary. What a mouthful! Which is simply another way of calling it assistant minister.
Yes.
To reward political failures like a Babu na Mwamba. We don't need it, because a CAS will come with a driver, will come with a personal assistant, will come with security, will come with bodyguards, all of whom must be paid. We need to build more offices, probably in town, like we're building for our members of parliament. We just can't afford it. One tomato is 10 bob.
It's
Now a tomato will be 15 bob because there's a CAS somewhere who will need to also be given a brand new VX worth 8 million shillings. All of that is going to be coming from my taxes, it's going to be coming from her taxes, from his taxes, from all our taxes. So we can't afford it, and let's just be honest about it. I know we want to find legal loopholes to say the president has the powers, but at the end of the day, we can't afford it. We're already suffering with what we have.
right.
So Punda imechoka actually.
All right. Ruth, as you comment also on that, the chief administrative secretaries also just give us your feel on the fact that a lot of young people are like, we have not been represented in these new appointments, and as well as the two-third gender role. Just a combination of that in brief.
Well, first and foremost, I think I want to agree with his sentiments, fully agree with it, because as a country, we are really having skewed priorities. We have teachers who are about to go back on strike because their CBA was not, honored to the letter. We have doctors whose pathetic, working conditions still persist despite having striked for a very long time last year. We still have, a high debt to grapple with as a country, and which has even been made worse by the fact that we held the most expensive election in the world, in the world. We just need to stop at that. And also, we are also forgetting the fact that the country lost a lot in terms of revenue due to the extended political heat that had taken over the country for the longest time. Companies are closing down. NGOs are closing down. Instead of having more jobs created, young people are losing jobs by the day because companies are now phasing out people. And I know that as a media personality, you know that there's a lot that has been restructuring that has been going on in various media houses, which has led to many people losing jobs. So then again, skewed priorities. Much as the president has the power, these are seriously skewed priorities. And even to go over and above that, we need to understand that here, we even have certain ministries that have more than one permanent secretary. For instance, the Ministry of Agriculture has has 5 permanent secretaries. What is all that for? Remember, these people, like he said, come with a very huge debt. And then again, the question of the women, as regards now the two-thirds, comes in what sense? In the sense that women are asking that whenever women are trying to seek to have the two-third gender rule implemented, which is a very small, which will take the government, or even which will take the political actors a very small extra cost. We are told that, we can't incur a heavier debt in terms of salaries. We can't incur a heavier burden in terms of paying salaries. And yet, we can have all these new positions created. And when you critically look at all those people who are filling these new positions, they are all political cronies who lost elections. So it's a political award system.
Yeah, that's
and
a
so,
very, delicate thing.
It's a very
And
delicate
the president,
issue.
of course,
I get it.
to
It's a
look
very
at that,
delicate issue. And also, just to go back to the discussion on the two-third, where my lawyer here comes and tells us that that the two-third gender principle should be achieved progressively. And yet we know that was a court order that was given way back in 2015 when the AG sought 2013 when the AG sought the advisory opinion of the then Chief Justice, who said it was to be achieved progressively until 2015, giving it a deadline of 2015, meaning that by 2015, there should have been mechanisms put in place to ensure that the same is achieved. Let's not forget that in 2016, when the president was restructuring his cabinet, and it turned out that the number of women cabinet secretaries were now at the number of 5, which was basically, I think, 20% or 25% representation, as opposed to 23%. A case was taken to court by the Center for Rights and Education Awareness, that is CRU, and the judge, Justice Onguto, actually gave a ruling that said that the president had contravened the provision of the constitution that requires that not more than 2/3 rather hold positions within appointive bodies. And then the judge's decision was that he could not, because the ultimate ruling was that the president was to disband the entire cabinet and reconstitute a new cabinet in line with the 2/3 gender principle. But the judge said, given the political climate at the time, the country was just a few months away to elections, and we could not afford to have such a political impasse. But right now, the president has just been inaugurated. I mean, it's been only 2 or 3 months since 2 months since he took power. We don't have any political standoff right now. There is no excuse not to have the 2/3 gender principle implemented.
All right. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but we would definitely continue with this discussion for sure. But thank you so much for coming through and participating. We also thank you and thank the entire team that has made this bulletin possible. We wish you a good night. Up next is Why Mashariki.